Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stand. Bit of an early one today, but look, lots to get through and some big news coming in overnight. Ralph Rangnick talking about being snubbed for a transfer in January, but a striker transfer, not a midfielder. We're talking about that. But the big story is Paul Pogba to Manchester City. This is being reported by numerous outlets now, Times, Mail, a few others. I think The Guardian have mentioned it as well, that Paul Pogba could join Manchester City this summer, that Man City are looking at him and that he's willing to do that deal. I've got two big things to say about this. First of all, I'm not actually that bothered from a footballing point of view. If Paul Pogba goes to Manchester City and the same City he's been for 6 years inconsistent and performs well, then, you know, that says a lot about the player and a lot about the club. There's nothing as fans that we can do about that. There's no doubt that Paul Pogba's a very, very good player. There's no doubt that Man City have got a very good coach and a very good team. So there's no doubt for me that Paul Pogba would go and perform better for Manchester City than he would for Manchester United. But on the other hand, I would say, well, that just exposes the failings of Manchester United themselves to not create a team that Paul Pogba can thrive in. But it also does point a big finger at Paul Pogba in the sense that, look, Ronaldo's just had an amazing season. David De Gea's just had an amazing season. Have we had those seasons from Paul Pogba in United sides that have been better than this? And I think that is a great point. It is, because Paul Pogba gets the excuse that, well, you know, he's never had a team around him, this, that and the other. Quality will thrive in any team. It will struggle, but it will also thrive. And Ronaldo has thrived, even though he struggled at times, in a rubbish team. Paul Pogba has played in better teams than this team for 6 years, and he has never had a season as good as what Ronaldo's had. So Pogba's input into this Man United issue, you know, I think everybody understands the word inconsistent. But if he did go to Man City, what would my thoughts be? I'd be disappointed. I wouldn't be losing any sleep over it, but I do feel for those United fans that would be really disappointed. It's not the same as if Ronaldo had gone to Man City, because Ronaldo's a Manchester United legend and Paul Pogba isn't, so it hurts more. But I would be disgusted with Pogba doing it, is maybe a strong word, because I don't feel that passionately about it. But what I do, I don't think it's a good move. I think it's a mercenary move. I really do. It'll be sold as a move to a club that he's excited about. But in the modern game, you shouldn't get this happening. You shouldn't get a player that's been at United for 6 years going to City. You shouldn't get it happening from Spurs to Arsenal. I know it has happened. I know Ashley Cole did it to Chelsea. Went from Arsenal to Chelsea, but it shouldn't be happening. It is a mercenary move. And it also exposes the modern footballer as somebody that's out for themselves. There's no club loyalty or love for club if you're going to go from Man United to Man City. It could happen. I'm not going to say it's not going to happen. The people that I feel for the most are those United fans who stood by Pogba. Of course, we've seen the United fans booing Pogba. We've seen Pogba getting a lot of abuse and get out of our club on social media and wherever. And those fans have got every right to do that. But for every fan that wants Pogba out of the club and, you know, wants to boo him, there's a lot more that actually appreciate him and like him. There's a lot of fans that like Pogba, and it's those fans. You know, life is sometimes like this. Pogba might be sat there going, you know, they booed me, screw them, I'm off to Man City. But the people who booed him and don't like him are not the full fan base. Might be 20%, 30%, could be 50%, but it's not 80, 90, 70%. And so therefore there's a lot of United fans that appreciate Pogba and would be really disturbed by him going to Man City. And that is something that obviously if Pogba goes to Man City, he's not going to consider, because he's going to consider himself. And there endeth the lesson. It's the modern football player. I think as United fans this year, we have learnt very, very, very clearly that these idols we have, they're paid idols. They're not lovers of the club. They're not lovers of the fans. They're not passionate about the club. They're not passionate about the fans, unless they're winning and they've got a picture on Instagram. There's very few players, unlike probably De Gea and Ronaldo and a couple of others, who actually get what it means to play for Manchester United. And I don't think there's many players in that squad that if they were out of contract and Man City said, we'll give you the same wage, come to our club, I can think of 7, 8 first team players straight away who would go. So let's not pretend that Paul Pogba's some sort of villain who's the only one who would do it. I'd say there's 7 or 8 first team players, regular first team players. If they were out of contract and Man City said, come to our club, they'd do it. It's amazing to do it when you live in the same city, but there's a lot of people talking about it. And of course, Paul Pogba is free. Paul Pogba can talk to Man City at the end of the season and he can go. And I've been saying this for a few months now. Why is the Premier League option not being discussed? Everyone's going on about PSG and Real Madrid for Pogba, but why is it not being discussed about a Chelsea or a Man City? Because why not? No one can stop him. And this is the failing of Manchester United. We spoke about Lingard and Bailly and Henderson and why didn't we sell them last summer? It was stupid to hoard players, but why have we let contracts run down? Why have we let Paul Pogba's contract run down? The second time we're going to lose him for nothing. But there is a big lesson here, and if you take anything from this, I will say this short piece. Manchester City in for Paul Pogba. Paul Pogba could go to Manchester City. My fear is that United will do what they did with Ronaldo and go, there's 450 grand a week, stay at Manchester United. If Pogba's going to Man City, that shows you that it's not about winning things really, because ultimately it's a mercenary move. If you want to win things, go to Real Madrid, go to PSG, respect your time at Man United. If he's going to Man City, I think he's thinking not only about winning things, he's thinking about money. And if he's thinking about money, then maybe this is all part of a game to get us to stay at Manchester United. And that's what scares me the most. I will say this controversially now, I'd rather he went to Man City than sign a new contract at Man United. And how bad is that? And I'm a fan of Pogba. I think he's a good player and I like Pogba and I'm not toxic towards him. I don't want him to stay at Man United. Absolutely not. So I would consider that if I was you. Do you want Pogba to go to Man City or do you want him to stay at Man United? That's the question, because if he's thinking about staying in Manchester and going to City, you can guarantee he'd stay at Man United. And therefore, if we offer more money, he'll probably sign a new contract at United. And nothing would surprise me. If it's considering Man City, nothing would surprise me. And I don't want him to stay at Man United. Not because I don't like the player, but because it's been 6 years. And I think we're giving second chances, sometimes third chances. We was on about this with Rashford last night. There's a few other players as well. Some of these players have had enough chances. It's time to... We're meant to be hitting the reset button. You can't hit the reset button if you're going to keep a lot of the same things that were part of the problem in the first place. So, look, if he goes to City, he goes to City. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. But yeah, I do think it's a bit of a shady move, really, because there will be fans that will be really disappointed by that. But I'd rather he went to Man City than sign a new contract, because I think we need to part ways, definitely. Anyway, next story I want to talk about is Ralf Rangnick. Ralf Rangnick, in an interview last night, which came out last night, I think it was from the embargoed press conference, saying that he asked for a striker at the end of the transfer window and was told no. Obviously, with the Greenwood situation, and we have been left short of a striker for the last 3 months, to be honest. We've been getting by with Ronaldo because Cavani's been injured, Rashford's been out of form, Martial went on loan, Greenwood obviously is on police bail, so that's been a problem in itself. I found this quite interesting because Rangnick was just very open about the fact that he wanted a striker and the club said no, they couldn't find anybody. Ultimately, then Rangnick said, but Vlahovic was available. Diaz went somewhere, Alvarez went somewhere to Man City and Liverpool respectively. So there were opportunities in the January transfer window that weren't taken up. And the funny thing is, I know for a fact that he wanted a midfielder as well, because Zakaria was mentioned, Kamara was mentioned. So there was other options. There was, basically Rangnick wanted a couple of players in January and the club said no. And look, there's nothing we can do about that. Would a couple of signings got us into the top four? They might have done. So the clubs, actually, this is disgusting. The club's refusal to buy players in January or bring a couple of players in January. And you don't have to buy. Look at what Spurs have done with Bentancur and Kulusevski. I think if they didn't bring those in, they wouldn't be in the top four. So in the top four race. So Manchester United's refusal to bring players in January has probably cost us a Champions League spot. I mean, we might not have got it anyway, but we would have had a better chance than we've had without bringing a couple of players in. And Rangnick clearly said he wanted a couple of players brought in, and the club clearly said they didn't. Now, this is something that's really important because as fans, it's been a bad season, and the players have got, quite rightly, a lot of the blame. But we said this in January, and and Rangnick has exposed it again. The club refused to improve that squad in January. At the height of all the leaks, at the heights of all the problems, the club said no. Now, I've said it, and some of you've said it quite a few times. Manchester United Football Club wrote the season off in November. And this is what scares me about the ownership and our board. We are Manchester United Football Club. For some of us, every day of every year is about what Manchester United is doing. How excited can I be about Man United? What are we going to do today? And we had owners who basically said, I know you're fans of Man United and you're passionate about it, but we're not doing anything for 6 months. For 6 months, we're not bothered because we're a business. And that's what happens at businesses. You go in November and you go, well, we'll wait till the end of the season and then we'll do what needs to be done. But what about the next 6 months? Well, the fans will turn up, they'll watch it on TV. Hopefully we'll scrape top 4, but we won't spend any money. That's a disgrace. It was obvious at the time. Some people didn't want to listen, but it was obvious at the time that when they sacked Solskjaer and they brought an interim coach in, they were writing off the season. But not only that, they did it even worse. They brought an interim coach in and they basically threw him to the Sharks because he came in with a mess that Solskjaer had created, a toxic environment that RANGNICK had to try and resolve whilst getting them to play the way he wanted to, and was then unable to bring his own coaches in, and further to that, was unable to bring any players in of himself. So basically, when you look at Ralf Rangnick, and probably one of the big reasons he's very popular with the fans, is because most fans can see he was on hiding to nothing. His job was to get Man United top 4, potentially, but to do it with a team that had been built by Solskjaer that wasn't good enough, that was toxic, and then not being able to bring any players in yourself. So basically, he had to work with the shit that Solskjaer had created and wasn't allowed to even bring one player in. A loanee, a signing, nothing. Nothing. You're not getting anything in the January transfer window. You've got to work with what you've got. And, you can sort of see why Rangnick struggled. You can see why United have struggled. But it goes back to the same thing. This club refused to bring any players in January. This club wrote the season off in November. And if anybody says, well, we didn't, of course we bloody well did. No ambitious football club sacks their manager in November and then hits a January transfer window, which is crucial, and goes, no, we're going to wait for the summer. That is an absolute prime example of writing the season off. And when people say, well, what is writing off the season? Writing off the season is, well, this season's not going anywhere. We're not investing any money in it. We've got a new manager coming in this summer. We'll wait till then. And it's all about money. It's always about money because they could have found 20 million. They could have found 20 million to get Kamara or Zakaria and then 15 million for a striker or a loan or something like that for a few months. They didn't even want to find 20 million. They didn't want to find 1 million. They didn't want to find any million. We're not spending any money in January. And it's bit the club on the arse. I spoke to somebody about 3 months ago about this, pretty close within the club, and they said this club is pretty arrogant. They thought that this club would still get top 4 even if they didn't invest. They thought top 4. They thought Arsenal and Spurs would never get enough points to topple this United squad, even though it needs work. They were arrogant that they thought United would get 4th, and it makes sense. It makes sense. Many of us said at the start of the season, top 4 is a closed shop, and it should have been. But United was so bad. Were so desperate for improvements in January that we fell away from the even 4th spot. So the club have played a game of rush, whatever you want to say, Russian roulette, poker, whatever you want to say. They've rolled the dice and they've got it wrong, and they are massively at fault again. The club are massively at fault, and again, well done to Ralf Rangnick for exposing the fact that he wanted players in January and didn't get them. We knew it anyway, but it always helps when he's public about it. And the interesting thing is that retrospectively, the club actually agree with that. So who was the CEO in January? Ed Woodward. Ed Woodward was the CEO in January. So look, maybe the club are accepting some of their mistakes now, but the reality is some of the people who were part of that were part of those mistakes as well. And it goes back to what I said on last night's show, which was, check it out, it was a really good show, that this summer is massively about the club. It can't be about Ten Hag. It can't be about Rangnick. It can't be about the signings, because ultimately Ten Hag will say he wants this. Rangnick will recommend that. Players will be available. It's what this club does. And it worries me. It does worry me that we have got owners who will write a season off when we're not even halfway through it. And that is what they did. That is what they did. And we are forever paying for the mistakes of these owners. And that, everybody knows this. Chelsea have just got a new owner in who have accepted something called the Glazer clause. Now, I don't know whether they've called it a Glazer clause, but it's being called a Glazer clause by the media, which means that these new Chelsea owners cannot take dividends out of Chelsea Football Club for 10 years. And they're calling it the Glazer Club, Glazer Clause, because the Glazers have been taking dividends out for years and years and years. That's what they bought us for. So, you know, the ownership structure of Man United's a problem, and it's a massive problem in relation to this season, without a doubt. Anyway, get your comments in below. What are your thoughts on Pogba? What are your thoughts on what happened in January? And, of course, it's match day, so we will be live for 5:30 kickoff today, so we'll be live about 4:30 with that. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Make sure you smash a like on the video. I'll speak to you all in a bit.